Yeah.
How's it going, everyone? This is the Anime Man, and welcome back to another episode of Fuck Japan, the occasional show where I take some of the weirdest, strangest, most WTF things about anime, manga, otaku culture, or just Japan in general. You know how this shit works. Now listen, let me just clear up one big thing that's going to be a huge point in today's video. I love dark fantasy stories. You know the ones I'm talking about, right? Berserk, Claymore, Shinsekai Yori, fuck it, throw in a little bit of Blood Plus in there for shits and giggles. And there you have a pretty good collection of some raw and gritty yet super encapsulating stories of swords, magic, and everything else edgy. But here's one thing about dark fantasy that I particularly enjoy. It's that it's a refined art. So many people have attempted to write some gripping and edgy dark fantasy stories, especially in the manga and anime world, and yet there are so many that have come out quite unsuccessfully. And that's because I feel that the genre of dark fantasy especially is a serious hit or a miss. It's very easy to fuck up, make super generic, or just way too edgy for the sake of edgy. And this one manga / light novel series that my good friend Dai Tomodachi opened the doors up to me for, and just so happens to be the creme de la creme of today's The Fuck Japan episode, just so happens to be all of the above. Now some of you might be looking at the title of today's video and thinking to yourself, wow, Joey, nice clickbait as usual, dipshit. But after you finish watching this video, if you do decide to stick around, I think you'll come to realize that this is really the only way that I can describe this piece that we'll be talking about. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, my purest of ladies and my most degenerate of gentlemen, today we'll be looking into and deeply analyzing this particular manga and light novel series, which I believe to be some of the most fucked up, messed up, and most edgy series to come out in the 21st century. And that series is simply titled Redo of a Healer. The story is set in a world of heroes and demons, as our main protagonist, Kiaru, is summoned by the heroes of time to partake in their party to destroy the evil demon lord and reclaim the land once and for all. After analyzing Kiaru's powers, the heroes discover that he falls under the Healer class, a backup class centered around healing the wounds of its party members. But the world isn't all daisies and rainbows for Kiaru, as he is tortured, beat up, and manipulated to do everything that his party members force him to do. If they need healing, they'll whip, beat, and fuck it out of him. Literally. However, one day, Kiaru realizes that his healing powers may not just be used to tend to wounds, but rather, with some tweaking, could possibly be the strongest class of them all, and that he hasn't been able to use them to the fullest extent due to his quote-unquote loyal party members depriving him of everything in his life. Thus, using his now awoken true healing powers, Kiaru decides to heal the world, causing time to turn back a whole 4 years before he joined the party so that he can redo everything again. But this time, Kiaru has a taste for revenge, and now it's his turn to seek out his past party members and pay back for everything that they did to him in his past life. Now, as you can see, that synopsis made no goddamn sense. And listen, my boys, that's not just me being shit at writing synopsis for stories, okay? Like, it's just genuinely a illogical and completely absurd story. First of all, these healing powers that our main protagonist Kiaru supposedly has, it's not healing powers at all. You've all been lied to. Because not only can this boy heal wounds like in any RPG-like game setting, but he can also heal abilities from other people and make it his own. He can heal physical properties into other physical properties through the use of alchemy. He can heal demons and evil spirits into its purest form, therefore nullifying every single attack that they come up with. And he can heal the world, causing time to reverse back to however long he desires whilst still maintaining his memories. Wait, hold on a second. That sounds fucking retarded, doesn't it? Can you imagine if you were playing like Final Fantasy and the white mage just shows up, starts fucking shooting fireballs, starts turning all of these like toxic things into healing properties, and then just stands back, looks back at you and is like, bro, I'm just a healer. Like, bitch. This has to be some of the most ridiculous plot convenience that I've ever seen in any manga or light novel. This is beyond plot convenience at this point. It's just illogical. There's zero logic to any of this. And mind you, this is a fantasy story at its core, so suffice it to say that logic doesn't really play an important role in these kinds of stories, considering that they're usually set in unrealistic settings. And yet this shit just sticks out like dog's balls, because they just lay all of this information on you like a dumpster truck and then try and drive away before you realize that they've just left all this trash here. Oh, and by the way, did I mention that all of what I just said happens in the first chapter? This is going to be a long video. So after he heals the world and basically pulls a ReZero on us and goes back to the first village that he started in, he begins to create these debuffs and abilities before the party members come and pick him up. Like the ability to resist poison so he doesn't get addicted to whatever drugs they gave him in his previous life. And gaining an all-seeing eye that allows him to see the enemy's stats and buffs that he randomly picks up from a fairy in the middle of the forest, because there wasn't enough plot convenience already, apparently. Now, in my eyes, that's all fine and dandy, because this isn't the first time that we've seen a power fantasy set in an RPG-like setting where the main protagonist is like this ridiculously OP character that can do anything and doesn't know how to fail. But here's where things start to get unnecessary, and I don't think I'll be able to show any of this, because later, after getting picked up by the heroes, who happens to be part of the royal house of the kingdom that reigns over the world, one of the maids of the royal house comes to his room and suddenly starts having unsolicited intercourse with him, because apparently the setting in this particular world is that in order for characters to level up, they need to have intercourse with someone who is classified as a hero, aka the main protagonist, and use their semen to convert that mana into experience to level up. What? This sounds like the plot to a hentai. Wow, I was just thinking the same thing, fellow viewer. It also doesn't help that the original light novel illustrations are done by 𝓡𝓮𝓷𝓰𝓮, who happens to be a seasoned veteran in the doujinshi and hentai world and makes some pretty fantastically cultured anime pictures, if you get my drift. But why am I dedicating an entire What the Fuck Japan episode to this RPG-esque dark fantasy show that has a shit protagonist and an even shittier story? Because wouldn't you know it, this shit show of a fantasy story is getting an anime adaptation next year. That's right, you heard me. Not a hentai, an anime. A television anime. I just want to ask one simple question. How the fuck? Not just in terms of how this got selected over the literal hundreds of manga and light novel series that are still waiting in line for their anime adaptation, but how the fuck are they going to animate any of this for TV? I don't think the anime industry boardroom people realize just how fucked up of a show this is. Like, this isn't some, like, One Piece-esque shonen we're dealing with here. If there was one thing I could pinpoint as to why an anime adaptation for this is just absolutely absurd, it boils down really to the main character's character. It's just a little insane. And by a little insane, I mean, like, clinically insane. Because the way that this author created this revenge-crazed protagonist is synonymous to an SAO fanfic written by a 15-year-old who only grew up watching a Serbian film and I Spit on Your Grave. Like, this show is just so goddamn edgy. You could slice your finger at how sharp the edge is. Ow! My finger! Ow! Let me give you a quick example of what I'm talking about. In chapter 6 of the manga, after tricking and capturing her previous party leader, which happens to be the princess to the ruling kingdom, our main protagonist starts to question and torture his captive. And I'm not going to show any of this next scene because I don't want to get demonetized or caught by copper, so I'm going to be giving you a description whilst my lovely editor Thomas is going to do his best with his art skills. By question and torture in this case, I mean he breaks each one of the fingers on her hands one by one, then heals her hands to do it all over again, and then after interrogating her with a hot iron rod that he creates through his healing alchemy, he straight up beats and rapes her to completion. I can't make that shit up if I try. And I wish, my boys, I could say that this is the worst chapter. but it's really not. No, that award, ladies and gentlemen, goes to Chapter 14, give a round of applause, in which our main protagonist captures the head of the royal guard who almost kills him in a previous chapter, but is responsible for murdering the village that our main protagonist grew up in. And again, I'm gonna have to rely on my boy Thomas for these art skills, but here's what happens in Chapter 14. After transforming the guard into a girl with his quote-unquote healing alchemy, he drugs the other guards with an aphrodisiac-filled substance he created and turns them into mindless, horny zombies. Upon seeing the head guard, who is now a tied-up, naked girl on the ground, a group of 10 to 20 guards gang rape her as our main protagonist sets the building on fire and walks out. Listen, guys. I wish I had the talent to make that shit up. Actually, no, scratch that. I wish I had the edge to make that shit up. But unfortunately, I am a sane human being. And again, may I remind you, may I be so inclined to remind you, this show is getting a fucking anime adaptation next year. Like, oh, and to answer your question, yes, I did in fact buy and read the original light novel series because I ain't no pussy bitch who's going to pirate his light novels. And yes, to answer your other question, it is much edgier and much more raunchy than the manga adaptation. So suffice it to say that all of this edge and shock value is not a result of a bad manga adaptation. It essentially falls into the same trap as Goblin Slayer did back in the day, in which people were freaking out about that one particular moment in the first episode for being way too obscene for TV, which made the manga readers laugh because that same scene in the manga was even more obscene, which in turn made the light novel readers laugh because that one scene in the light novel is even more obscene. It's like an obscene Ouroboros. And the one silver lining or thing I'm looking forward to about a show like Redo of a Healer getting an anime adaptation is that I get to experience what I think is going to be one of the biggest shitstorms to ever hit the coast of the online anime community, especially when they decide to adapt chapters like Chapter 6 and Chapter 14. Because I'm warning you right now, my boys, take this video as a warning for next year, that if they decide to completely keep all of the scenes in things like Chapter 14 and Chapter 6, then it genuinely is going to be a World War III on the online anime community between the SJWs and everybody else who can take a little bit of dark fantasy. Like, I shit you not, this shitstorm that is going to be started is going to make that one scene in Goblin Slayer look like a fucking fairy tale episode. Because we're not just talking about a goblin rape scene here, we're talking about human on human violence and rape scenes, and multiple scenes of that. So kids, grab your emergency Pocky, grab your emergency Ramune, and prepare the social media evacuation for what is going to be the biggest shitstorm of 2020 that the online anime community has ever seen. But let's hit the brakes a little bit, because in all seriousness, after finishing about 20 chapters of this manga, because I somehow managed to conjure up enough mental energy to make it through 20 chapters of this shit, I genuinely question myself as to why I don't like this particular series, this particular dark fantasy series. Because as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, dark fantasy is one of my favorite genres of the medium. So what is it that differentiates between Redo of a Healer and say something like Berserk? Because if you think about it, both have gory scenes, both are based on revenge of some kind, both have an overpowered main protagonist, and both have multiple rape and obscenely sexualized scenes. And obviously ignoring the point about there being a difference in the art style, because there really is no comparison between the godlike art style of Mira Kentaro versus the quite generic and mediocre art style of the Redo of the Healer manga. I think the biggest difference that separates these two shows in particular is how much emotion is put behind the act of revenge. You see, in Berserk, we were given not just an entire chapter, not just an entire volume, but an entire arc, 9 whole volumes of the manga to explore Guts' past and the reasons for why he is out to get his revenge. In the Golden Age arc, you not only get a fantastic exploration into the state of the world at large, but also a deep look into Guts as a character, and a fully fleshed out view of how and why his character changed over time. Meanwhile, in Redo of a Healer, we get all of that in one chapter. That's the first one. Of course, we get glimpses back to his previous life as the story goes on, but it's just that. It's only short glimpses. We're given this overarching, I am mad and I'm out for revenge for XYZ reasons, but that doesn't give the reader enough time or information to get fully invested in this character. At the end of it, it doesn't make the act of revenge seem justified, and thus only adds to the edginess factor of all the terrible and obscene things the protagonist ends up doing to these characters that we also know very little about. Wait, hold on, why am I even comparing Berserk to 𝓟𝓻𝓷? That's like comparing reaction channels to good content. I feel the only reason why series like 𝓟𝓻𝓷 is managing to grab itself an anime adaptation despite all of its very non-TV friendly scenes and settings is purely due to the fact that it has a particular concept that is a huge trend right now in the anime industry. I mean, just think about it. RPG-like setting, swords, demons, magic, ecchi, overpowered protagonist, edgy for the sake of being edgy. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? I mean, at this point, I'm convinced that the people up at the top of the anime industry boardroom aren't even looking into series when they decide to adapt it into an anime. They probably just have like a checklist of like, yeah, this seems like everything that we've made in the past couple of years. Yeah, the weebs will eat this shit up like candy. Because in all honesty, how else would a show like 𝓟𝓻𝓷 get an anime adaptation? How else would a manga like Ishizoku Reviewers, a series that is set in an RPG like isekai world where heroes go around and review different prostitution centers that have different species of the fantasy world? How would a show like that get an anime adaptation? The fact of the matter is that we're forever stuck in this isekai-esque RPG-like power fantasy setting, and these schmucks over in the anime industry don't fucking realize we want out. We're done with these isekais, bro, just like we were done with all these fucking vampire-themed shows back in the early to mid-2000s. We want something new. We want change. Enough is enough. We need something new and refreshing now, please. So yeah, overall, do I recommend 𝓟𝓻𝓷? No. Only if you're like a serious masochist like me and you like reading shit shows of series. Don't even bother wasting your time with this. There are so many other fantastic dark fantasy series. Go and read Berserk or Claymore. Just that alone will show you how fucking amazing dark fantasy can be. And look, even after I've said all this, I'm probably still gonna check out the anime adaptation for it because I'm genuinely just excited for how big of a shitstorm this is going to stir up on the online anime community. It was hilarious when it happened with Goblin Slayer, and why would I miss out on some more fun? Look, the fact that I went out and bought the fucking light novel of this shit series just goes to show you that I ain't a pussy bitch, alright? I'm fully committed to the shit shows at this point. But yeah, whatever happens next with this show, I think we can all agree that our general reaction to all of it is gonna be, what the fuck, Japan? But guys, let me know what you think about this in the comments below. What do you think about shows like this getting an anime adaptation? Or rather, what do you think about shows like this at all? Do you think they're just edgy shows for the sake of having shock value? Or is there some kind of substance to shows like this that I completely missed the point on? Also, I want to know, what is your overall view of the whole isekai trend in the anime industry right now? I talk about it in a lot of videos, especially when I am rambling on about newer seasons and I keep seeing all of these new fucking isekai shows and I'm fucking sick of it. I'm genuinely curious what you guys think about it. Are you also kind of sick of the isekai trend and you want something else, or do you think there is more potential in the isekai genre? I'm interested to hear all of your thoughts and opinions on any of that kind of stuff, so make sure to let me know in the comments below. Also, if there are any more weird, strange, what the fuck things about anime, manga, games, hentai, otaku culture, or just Japanese culture in general, then you can leave it down in the comments below, or the better way to do it is to go over to my Twitter and use that hashtag #WhatTheFuckJapan. Link me your articles, link me a topic that you'd like me to talk about, and if it's weird and strange and something that I can rant about, then I might use it in the next What the Fuck Japan episode. Again, big shout out to my boy 𝓟𝓻𝓷 for recommending me this particular series. He is a fantastically talented content creator here on YouTube, so I'll leave the link to his channel down in the description below, so definitely go give your boy a holler. Anyways guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Like and favorite if you enjoy, subscribe for more anime banter, keep watching anime. Ciao ne!